Hi there, I'm Tracy, and thanks for joining me here at the 3-Wick Thesis Candle channel. Today I have episode 3 of my best coffee candle series. If you haven't already checked out episode 1, I would recommend starting there. In that episode, I go over what this project is, talk about kind of the method to my madness, and share with you what to expect as we move through the series. I'll also note that episode 2 has been out for a bit. That explores candles that just straight up smell like coffee. If you're interested in that, I would also definitely check that video out. I'll go ahead and put a link to both of those down in the description. And then a note about this particular episode, there are 6 candles that I'm reviewing, and if you want to skip around to ones that you're most interested in, or if you're the type of person who just wants to cut right to the end and see my final recommendations and the final scores on the roster, I completely support that decision. You can either click the chapter links that are highlighted below in the description, or if you hover along the bottom of the video here with your mouse, you'll notice that there are sections that are labeled with the specific candles, as well as the findings, conclusions, and recommendations. So feel free to jump around. I'll also note that if you aren't already subscribed and you'd like to see episode 4, which is forthcoming, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Episode 4 is going to explore latte and mocha candles. So this series just kind of blew up. I started with just trying to find a coffee candle. It blew up into lots of coffee candles, and then I realized that there's just so many different categories that you could lump these into that it ended up being a 4-part series. So if you want to get insight into the next episode, definitely subscribe. And also, if you appreciate my research and you really value what I'm doing here, I would love it if you could give me a thumbs up. It makes me feel good, and it also motivates me to keep creating content. So let me just break down what this episode is going to look like. I'm going to go through each candle one at a time. You'll see the cold impression where I share with you things like the label, the wax color, the wick information. I'll share with you the scent notes and talk about kind of how I feel about the candle on cold. I'll then cut the video, go out, burn each one of these candles. Some of these I've gone through full candles already, so I'll have lots of insights. And then I'll fast forward, cut to the post-burn analysis where I'll talk about all those elements from my Lighting the Way series, so things like scent quality, throw, burn quality, as well as aesthetic design. And if you're not familiar with my Lighting the Way series, I'll go ahead and put a link in the description to that playlist. Those are where I do single candle reviews and I use a candle performance rubric. This is a little bit different because I'm using that rubric, those elements, plus I'm also going to share with you an element of value. So I'll talk about the price per ounce as well as the price per hour. And that will help you gauge what you think is the best option for you based off of the regular Lighting the Way elements plus price and your budget. I will end the video with my final conclusions. The roster right now is in no particular order. It's completely randomized, but I'll run some calculations, figure out which candles have the highest GPA, rank them for you, reorder the roster, and then I'll also give out like best of show awards to each of the rubric elements and then tell you which ones I think are best overall. These are my opinions. It's definitely something that's slightly subjective. I tried to be as objective as possible, but please note that you may not agree with me, and I completely support that. That's part of what's fun about the candle community, is that we can have varying opinions and share what we think and what we know about the candles that we love or don't love. So hopefully you find this helpful, and I'm really excited to share this information with you. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first candle on the roster is Bath & Body Works Pink Lavender and Espresso. This is a White Barn candle. I am sharing with you last fall's jar. It's got the sort of, I don't know what this is supposed to be. Some people say it looks like an ultrasound. It kind of looks like tree bark to me, or some sort of like watercolor painting. So the aesthetic is interesting. There was a whole series that had this same design that had, I think it was like Midnight Cocktails, Cozy Sunday Night. And this one, Book Locked was another one. So this is one of those in those series. I will note that there is a new label that came out this spring that looks like this. I don't assume there'll be much difference in terms of throw, one because the scent notes haven't changed, but also because the jars are similar. And I can tell you that some of the burn issues I've experienced with this jar are the same burn issues that I experienced with the Neutrals line, which is also White Barn by Bath & Body Works. The scent notes on pink lavender and espresso are rich pink lavender, caramel espresso beans, and smooth vanilla. And again, I chose this one because I thought it was going to smell like coffee, but it ended up smelling a lot more like lavender than I was expecting, which is how it ended up in this adjacent episode. On cold, you definitely get an espresso note. It's a roasted, dark roasted coffee scent. It smells very much like espresso. But then you also get the really nice floral from the lavender. So that espresso just kind of adds this it's almost like a burnt note or a caramelized note. And that might also be coming from the caramel scent note that's in here to that floral. So lavender can sometimes be really earthy. It can also be really sweet. I feel like the lavender in this is well balanced. And so the espresso and caramel kind of help to ground it more in an earthy note and kind of a roasted or toasty note. I'll also share with you, I have talked about this one in another video that I did. And I will say that this reminds me a lot of how my grandpa used to smell. And I say that because my grandpa used to smoke pipe, and his pipe tobacco was always very sweet and kind of floral. And then I feel like he was always drinking black coffee. So when I smell this candle, I think about hugging my grandfather. It just hits those notes for me. So I kind of have a special place in my heart for this. It might actually bias my insights, but at the same time, I feel like it also, sharing that story also expresses to you what I'm getting on cold is just this really cozy, comforting, warm coffee floral note that's just really delicious. In terms of the wax color, we have white wax on this one, and the wicks are kind of this medium ropey wick. I also like that the jar on this one is a matte finish lid that kind of accents some of the lighter beige notes in the label here. Okay, so let's talk about the scent quality of the pink lavender espresso candle. I think that this is appropriately named. You definitely get that pink lavender first. This is, to me, a floral candle before it is a coffee or espresso candle, which is why it ended up in my coffee adjacent series. You get that really nice, warm lavender blended with this kind of undercurrent of coffee scent. I do think that it's well balanced. I think it reflects the name. And so in terms of scent quality, even though it did not give me as much espresso as I wanted, I did assign it an A. I feel like it's nice and earthy. It's a little bit floral and just has a really good combination of scent notes when it's warmed. In terms of throw, this one was a little bit hard to assign. When I first lit this candle, I would have assigned it the throw of an A because it was really strong, almost overpowering, filled my open concept, easily filled smaller rooms. However, about halfway through, this candle started to dud. You'll also see that it started to soot here. And when it was dudding, I feel like it couldn't throw. It did still fill my small room, my 11 by 14 bedroom, but it could not fill out my open concept while it was dudding. I just let it rip. I just kept letting it burn, and it did come back to life, but it's never come back to the full throw that I experienced when I first lit it. And I'm almost done with this one here. So for that reason, I would normally assign it an A when it was new, and I would assign it a C at the midway point. So I'm going to go ahead and just do something in the middle and give it a B for throw. In terms of burn quality, this candle did have noticeable issues. It was consistently sooting. That's why we've got the brown haze all around the top here. You can also see that the wax pool has turned a little bit grayish brown. It's getting discolored from that soot. Also because of the dudding issues. At one point I did pour wax out of this. The flames were so small because the wicks were being suffocated by the wax, and it really just had blue flame to it. So with all those issues, and again, this is a White Barn, that might have something to do with it. I, in general, have bad luck with White Barn candles, but I ended up assigning it a C just because I expect a better quality burn from a candle. In terms of aesthetic design, I did assign this candle a B. I feel like it's attractive and it's interesting, but it also is the same type of label with other candles that were in this series. And so it just doesn't feel quite as unique as I think that it could be. I also don't feel like it's necessarily relevant to the scent notes. There's nothing about this that necessarily reminds me of lavender, for example, or really espresso. It kind of just looks like wood bark to me. So while the label is attractive and I like the way that it looks when it glows, I don't feel like it is relevant or as intentional as it should be, so I assigned it a B. Now, in terms of value, this candle normally runs for $26.95 when it's full price. It is 14.5 ounces, which works out to $1.86 an ounce. This candle burns from 25 to 45 hours. And as you'll recall from episode 2, I stuck with the higher number just in terms of consistency. So if you clock this at 45 hours, that means you're paying 60 cents per hour. Now, none of us at Bath & Body Works that are die-hard customers are willing to pay that price. So I also calculated the value at half price, which is a decent, not great, but decent sale price, which would make this $13.48. That brings it down to 93 cents an ounce and 30 cents an hour. So I did assign letter grades for each of those that are in comparison to the other candles in the series. That means it got a B for a per ounce price and a C for a per hour price. Overall, I highly recommend Pink Lavender Espresso, even given the issues that it has. However, the GPA was relatively low at a 2.83. The next candle on the list is also a White Barn candle by Bath & Body Works. It's Coffee and Whiskey, and this one only comes in the single wick format. However, I am taking that into consideration when I'm doing my comparison. Basically, how does it perform for a single wick? I am not, for example, comparing it to what I would expect for a throw from a 3-wick. So that will be under consideration in my evaluation. I'll also highlight that this is one I have already burned, so you won't get insight into what the new wick looks like. However, you can still see that the wax is white, and this wick is the same as all other single wick candles from Bath & Body Works. It's a stiffer, thinner wick, and this one I burned before I even knew I was going to do this research. Actually, before I even knew I was going to do a YouTube channel. I first burned this back in October and just haven't bought a backup for it. So I'm using this one, it's used, but I can still get the cold notes from it, so I think we're okay. This one has scent notes of bold Irish whiskey, splash of vanilla, hint of coffee. And you get the whiskey note first. It's actually kind of it smells like an oaked whiskey, so you get a little bit of booziness, but you also get a wood note that you would expect from like an oak Irish whiskey or an oaked bourbon. It's kind of earthy and woodsy, and a hint of sweetness coming from what I think is probably vanilla that's coming from the bourbon. And then you also have the splash of vanilla, but it doesn't feel like vanilla bean or like bakery vanilla. It just feels like bourbon with a vanilla note. And the coffee on this one, hint of coffee, is accurate. I think when I first bought this one, I kind of assumed that it would be more coffee forward, and it wasn't, which is why it ended up in the coffee adjacent series. Still a really nice candle. You do get the little bit of the coffee in there. It just adds kind of a complexity, a darkness, a roastiness to the back of that wood and vanilla scent. The label on this is pretty plain. Just has the sticker on the front, and then it's a clear glass jar all the way around with a stainless steel lid. In terms of my post-burn evaluation of coffee and whiskey, I'm going to tell you that I assigned a B for scent quality. And that's because, honestly, when I burn this candle, this is not a coffee and whiskey candle. This is a whiskey and coffee candle. I get very little coffee. There is some undercurrent in it. It's just not enough for me, and I am misled by the name. I do feel like this is a whiskey forward candle, which is pleasant, but not what I was expecting. And when it's burning, really all I get is like an oaked whiskey note. It's boozy, it's got some vanilla in it. It almost smells like a bourbon with just this very little touch of roasted coffee. So really, I want more coffee. So while I think it's true in its description and that it has those scent notes in it, I think the name is reversed, and I feel like it's a little inauthentic given the title. Now, in terms of throw, I did take into consideration that this is a single wick, so I only tested this in my bathroom space, which is pretty small. If I had to guess, I'd say it's about probably 9 by 7, maybe 10 by 7. It's a pretty tiny room, and half of that is closet space and shower, so it really amplifies small candles, including like the Kringle daylight candles. And even with this burning in the small space, I'm only assigning it a C. I don't feel like it threw really well. It did fill the space, but it took a very long time. And in general, I think that has to do with its whiskey undertones. Those darker, boozy, woody vanilla notes tend to not throw quite as hard as other notes do in other candles. So I assign this a C for throw. In terms of burn quality, like single wicks from Bath & Body Works, this one also tunneled. I did have some trouble getting it to go all the way to the edge, and you can see even here, there's some kind of lip up here where it did not burn all the way into a full pool. Also have quite a bit of wax sediment on the jar where I have lit it. It still burned okay. I don't think that it necessarily is going to completely dud out or continue to have deep tunneling issues. So for that reason, I did assign it a B. It has problems, but it doesn't affect the overall performance. In terms of aesthetic design, I gave this a C. It's functional, but basic. This doesn't really, it serves its purpose. It tells me the name, it gives me the scent notes, but it doesn't scream to me coffee. It doesn't scream to me coffee and whiskey. And I know that that's partially just because that's how these single wicks are, but I'm really craving something a little more creative with my coffee candles. Now, in terms of value, this candle is $16.95. It's only 8 ounces. And what that means is that it works out to $2.12 an ounce. That's pretty pricey, y'all. This is actually a longer burn time than the 3 wicks. It's 30 to 50 hours. So if I cap that out at 50, it works out to 34 cents an hour. Again, few of us are willing to pay a full price for a single wick, so if we put this at a sale price of $10, we often see the 2 for $20 or the $10 sales, then that knocks that down to $1.25 an ounce and 20 cents an hour. In comparison to the other candles in the group, that means it got a D for price per ounce and an A in terms of price per hour. Overall, Coffee and Whiskey earned a 2.5 GPA out of 4, and I don't think I'll be repurchasing this one. My husband does enjoy it, but for the price value and the throw, I just think there's better options available. The next candle that I have for us on the roster is Goose Creek's Espresso Cake Pop. This one has a pretty fun jar. It's got the little cake pops on there, has the appropriate coffee colored border there at the bottom. Just kind of a classic stainless steel lid. The wax on this one is white, and the wicks on this they almost look like core wicks. Can't quite see. Yeah, I think those are core. I feel like I see a little tiny core in the center there, but not super clear. These also could be the thinner ropey ones, but I'm pretty sure there's a core wick in there. This one, scent notes are vanilla cake batter, warm chocolate cake, espresso beans, vanilla frosting, and sprinkles. And when I first saw this one from Goose Creek, I ordered it because I thought with the espresso in the title that this was going to be a very espresso forward candle. And what I found was that it's actually more cake forward, and I think the espresso just brings out the chocolate scent in this. Hence the reason it's in the coffee adjacent series. On cold, you just get this really rich, dark chocolate. It almost smells like fudge, like dark fudge. Get a little bit of vanilla, and it's like a vanilla bean, borders on the edge of extract. And you do get the coffee on cold. It smells more like a brewed coffee to me. Espresso tends to be richer and have a little bit of a darker note to it, but this very much has a lighter roasty smell to it, like fresh brewed coffee would have. It's really delicious on cold. I don't know if I'd say it makes me think of cake pops, but definitely more gourmandy, chocolatey, and very rich in terms of chocolate scent. Okay, so in terms of scent quality on Espresso Cake Pop, you're going to see a common trend with the rest of these on the list. This one got a B because I don't feel like the scent notes accurately represent what the scent is when you warm it. These ended up in the coffee adjacent series because I don't think they necessarily align with what the scent notes say, but I get almost no espresso in this candle whatsoever. It's possible that it is pulling out the chocolate that's in it, but really all I get is a wonderful, delicious chocolate candle. It's authentic, which is why I didn't give it a C. There is no artificialness in this at all. It is not weak, but it also doesn't really smell like espresso. So I think what you're getting is like a chocolate cake batter that maybe has espresso powder in it to accent or amplify the chocolate. So I did assign this a B for scent quality. In terms of throw, this thing is a beast. It throws really well. In my small space, it filled up pretty quickly. My open concept, it fills out nicely. In fact, I burned this in my husband's office, which is about the same size as our bedroom, and it got so strong that I almost got to the point of wanting to burn it out because it was a little too much. So I assigned this an A for throw. I think it has an excellent throw. It's a really pleasant scent when it's throwing, and I love it. Now, in terms of burn quality, I'm showing you this video here, but don't be deceived. This is early in the candle's life, and this is my second go with Espresso Cake Pop. The first time I burned this candle, it actually showed up in my empties for January. It dudded out about a third, 2/3 of the way through, so there was about a third of the jar left, and it just continued to dud out. It really struggled. I had to pour wax out. It was able to recover. I was able to finish it off, but I just don't want to have to fight with a candle to stay lit. I'm hoping that this one is going to do better. The first, second burn were both excellent. The wax pool looks great, but the wax pool on the previous one was pretty sooty and in general kind of got destroyed by the dudding. So I did assign this based off of my previous experience with this candle a C for burn quality. In terms of aesthetic, I assigned this candle an A. I think it's definitely representative of the scent notes. It's relevant. I think it's stylish. It's fun. I think of Espresso Cake Pops when I look at this label. I love the espresso tinted border here. I love that this is brown. It makes me think of espresso and cake. In terms of price, this retails full price for $25.50. It is a 14.5 ounce candle, which works out to $1.76 per ounce. Goose Creek claims that their candles will burn up to 45 hours, and that puts that at 57 cents per hour. Very few of us in the candle community will pay full price for Goose Creek candles, and you can frequently get 6 for $60, 5 for $55, 4 for $44. So I went ahead and calculated the value based off of a common sale price of $11, which drops the per ounce price down to 76 cents and the per hour price down to 24 cents. That means that it receives an A for value in terms of per ounce price and a B in value in terms of per hour price. Overall, the Espresso Cake Pop earned a 3.33 out of a 4.0 scale. I highly recommend this candle. This is my second repurchase. I also have 2 in back stock, and I might buy another one. This is probably my favorite scent from Goose Creek that I've ever had. Granted, I haven't bought all of their summer candles and some of their spring candles, but of the ones I've bought since last fall, this one's my number 1. I love it. Highly recommend it, even with the issues that it has. The next candle on our list is another White Barn candle by Bath & Body Works. This one is the number 33 limited edition that came out last year. I will note that this recently came out this spring. It was a part of the Spring 2 launch, and they titled it Lemon Espresso Twist. So that's the new label over here. Again, I'm going to be evaluating it on this label. I don't expect these to have different scent notes just because they have the exact same formula. In fact, fans like us actually helped to name this candle last year, so I don't expect there to be a difference in scent. However, you might expect a difference in throw because this one feels like more of a classic White Barn jar, whereas this one here looks more like a classic Bath & Body Works jar. So take that into consideration when I'm talking about burn quality on this one. The label on this one is pretty plain. It's just got this kind of coffee colored border at the bottom. This is almost like a dark gray or a dark navy color. Just a wraparound, no image or anything. But to be fair, this candle, I think the label is appropriate. It came out and the whole goal was that the candle community and Bath & Body Works fans would help to name this candle and decide whether or not it was going to go into production. It did, of course, because now we have it in the new Spring 2 release. So I'm a little bit forgiving of the boring label on this one. It also feels very White Barn-esque with the neutral matte lid that's accompanying it. And then your wax on this one is white. And we have the medium ropey wicks. And let me tell you, I popped that top off to show you the wax and I can already smell the citrus in this one. Scent notes on this are espresso beans, warm vanilla, and lemon peel. And on cold, it is so juicy and delicious. You get that lemon. The lemon is to me very strong on cold. The espresso shows up, but it's very much a foundational or base note. It's kind of lingering, and it kind of smells like what I think of if I were drinking like an Ethiopian coffee. Ethiopian coffees often have citrus notes to them. If I were drinking Ethiopian coffee while eating a slice of lemon pound cake. So if you want to know what this candle smells like on cold, go to Starbucks, get the lemon pound cake, and see if they have an Ethiopian blend, and eat that while you drink the coffee. And that's what this smells like on cold to me. Again, this ended up in the coffee adjacent because that citrus note is pretty strong. Comes through really strong and ends up kind of shadowing the espresso note in this candle. All right, in terms of the scent quality for number 33, when I'm warming this, I get a lot more lemon and a lot less espresso. I love the combination of lemon and espresso, but to me, I wouldn't put the first scent note as espresso beans. I definitely would put the second note as warm vanilla. I would label this as a lemon peel candle with espresso in it, because that's really all you get is the citrus, and then you get this kind of base note or undercurrent of fresh brewed coffee. I love the combination. I'm here for it. It's a very enjoyable candle, which is why it made it into my coffee adjacent series, but I am giving it a B because I don't feel like it smells enough like coffee and it doesn't represent the title and the scent notes. In terms of throw, it was difficult to gauge this one. When I first started burning it, I feel like it was really, really strong. And now I'm about halfway through and I feel like it's not as strong as it was. Now either I've gone nose blind to it or it has devolved into throwing less. It really could go either way. I did end up assigning it a B because while it effectively fills out my smaller space, it does not do as well at filling out my open concept anymore. In terms of burn quality, I feel like this one's doing really well. I did notice there's just a little bit of sootiness right here on this one part of the jar, possibly from the placement of that wick. I'll also note that this wax pool looks really greasy right now. That's because I had this lit recently, probably an hour ago. It hasn't fully solidified yet. It's part of my March rotation and I'm loving it. But in terms of sooting, consistent burning, the flame's not getting too high, flame's not getting too short. It's been super consistent, so I'm assigning it an A for burn quality. Aesthetic design, y'all, it was hard to fairly evaluate this one. In general, this jar is super boring to me. But I have to take into consideration that this was supposed to be a sort of like mystery candle. Bath & Body Works fans were supposed to come up with like a title for it. I don't think it would have made sense to make a label that was pretty attractive and appropriate. So I ended up giving it a B. That's because if I were just evaluating it without that context, I probably would have given this a C as it just being functional and not special. But because I think that was the point, I'm going to go ahead and bump it up to a B. Now, in terms of value, this is a $26.95 candle. Like the others is 14.5 ounces. That works out to $1.86 an ounce. If we cap it at its maximum burn time with the 25 to 45 hour range, that puts it at 60 cents an hour. Again, marking this down to half price because I think that's a little more reasonable. we get it down to $13.48, which makes it 93 cents per ounce and 30 cents per hour. That means that it gets a B in the per ounce price value and a C in the per hour price value. Overall, this candle earned a 3.0. I highly recommend this, and I know there are naysayers out there who say that lemon and coffee don't go together. I love this candle. I think it works really well, and I recommend you pick it up. The fifth candle on the list is a Homeworx candle called Espresso Martini. And to be honest with you, I am not a Homeworx fan. I don't buy their candles. I had some shop cash from all of my Goose Creek orders, and I logged on and just thought, okay, well, let's see what they have available. Saw that they had an Espresso Martini candle, knew that I was going to be doing this research, so said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and buy this one. I do like the label. I like that it's representative. It's got the espresso bean martini on there. I think it's realistic and kind of fun. The wax on this is a nice caramelly brown color, which you would expect of a coffee candle or an espresso martini candle. You'll see I've already burned this one. I did not repurchase this one for this review. And the wicks on these are super, super thin, and they get really curly when you burn them. The scent notes on this one are freshly brewed Italian espresso, cafe au latte liqueur, rum, and whipped vanilla froth. I gotta say, my cold impression is that I don't get much from this candle at all. I get a little bit of what smells like a dark roast coffee or a dark roast espresso. So it's got like almost like a burnt note to it. I get a little bit of sweetness. And I feel like I can get a little bit of booziness, but it's not really identifiable. It just, in general, this candle just feels kind of like ambiguous scent notes blending together. Definitely get a hint of the coffee, but not much of anything else. I think there's definitely some lactose in there. But honestly, this candle feels mostly unscented to me. The lid is got this kind of embossed design to it. I think that's common with the Homeworx candle. The jar is pretty interesting. I don't know if I particularly like this style just because it's hard to store. These things are kind of huge, and it's a brick. It's really heavy. All right, y'all, this candle, this is the one I have been dreading talking about because I despise it so much. In terms of scent quality, I'm not even sure where to begin. You know, I'm looking at my rubric, and maybe this candle is going to force me to edit it because weak doesn't begin to describe the scent quality of this candle. Right now, I'm smelling it. There's still, I don't know, about a third left. And really all I'm getting is soot, wax, and maybe a hint of like espresso or chocolate. I can barely smell it. And when I burn it, it is entirely unscented. And that's with me sitting right next to it. I can't smell it. I ended up assigning it a C, but I also feel like it really probably should be lower than that just because it has no scent. It also, therefore, has no throw, so I was able to assign this an F because and I have barely detectable in my rubric. It's not detectable even after the second burn. In fact, I think the only time I smelled this was when it was cold. Every consecutive burn I have done has gotten worse. There's just no fragrance to this candle whatsoever. So in terms of burn quality, I did give this a B. The wicks are really, really thin. It gets really curly. It also ends up creating wick residue in the wax pool. I've also found that this candle burns really quickly. I've only lit this candle maybe, I think probably 4, maybe 5 times, and I usually burn it for a couple of hours at a time, and I'm already more than halfway through it. There's no way I'm going to hit the minimum of 30 hours. So I marked it down because it burns too quick and it burns a little dirty. Now, in terms of aesthetic design, I actually really like the label. I think it's relevant. It feels intentional. I love the espresso martinis that are on the label. It's coffee or espresso colored. I do like the design of the jar and the lid. I do feel like Homeworx is trying to set themselves apart from the classic 3-wick jar style, so I did assign them an A in terms of aesthetic. Now with value, full price, this is a $30 candle. It is 18 ounces, which works out to $1.66 per ounce. If you go by their range of 30 to 55 hours, which I do not believe, if you cap it out at the 55, you're paying 55 cents per hour to burn this candle. Again, most of us would not pay full price for a Homeworx candle. They commonly go on sale for $21.99. That would bring it down to $1.22 per ounce and 40 cents per hour. In comparison to the other candles in this roster, it becomes a C for the per ounce price and a D for the per hour price. Really, given the horrible quality, lack of throw, and lack of scent, it is a very expensive candle that is not worth the price. Overall GPA for this candle worked out to a 2.0. I will say that I got this as a part of Shop Cash. I think I paid, I want to say it was like $6 for it, and I think that's too expensive. So I will not be repurchasing this. This does not make me enthusiastic about other Homeworx candles by Slatkin & Co. I will be hard-pressed to buy another one of these from this brand. Maybe you've had better luck, but I was just really disappointed. So I do not recommend it for you. And then the final candle on the list is the Sweet Tiramisu candle from Goose Creek. This came out last year. I do think they'll probably re-release it this year. It is not currently on the market. However, I still did want to include it in my review just because I bought it while I was researching, and I feel like it has a worthy place in the coffee adjacent episode. I love the picture of the tiramisu on the front, and I bought this candle originally because I really thought that tiramisu smells like coffee. I've made it myself. I know that you dip the lady fingers, which is kind of this crusty layer here and this crusty layer here. You actually dip that in strongly brewed coffee, and my hands will actually smell like coffee for a day or two after I make tiramisu. It's usually that strong. So I thought, if there's a tiramisu candle, it's going to have a really strong espresso note. And it ended up not having as strong of one as I'd hoped for, hence the reason it's in the coffee adjacent series. The scent notes on this one are Italian espresso, whipped cream, cocoa, and sugar. And on cold, you get a really strong whipped cream lactose note. It's not very sweet. There's like a hint of sweetness to it. It almost smells like Cabbage Patch Doll sweet. Like, that's the best way I can describe it, is it feels vanilla-y and sugary, but not necessarily baked good like. And then you get very little espresso on cold. The cocoa comes through, but it's not super dark and bitter. It's definitely cocoa and sugar, so you're getting that sweetness. And the espresso note is in the background. I feel like it's just kind of bringing out the cocoa, but I really don't get a strong espresso note on cold. Now I have burned this one, so it's difficult to tell what the wicks would have looked like originally, but I can tell you just by the way that they're mushrooming and curling that these are thin wicks that are curly as well. And then the wax is kind of a creamy color. It's not quite white. It kind of reminds me of what the filling would look like in tiramisu, which is usually made of mascarpone and whipped cream. So appropriate, I think, for what this candle is. The label does have the picture of tiramisu here. It's got some nice detail at the bottom of the label. The lid is gold and shiny, and then it's just a wrap around. The glass is slightly frosted, so you can still see the wax, but it's not a clear, glossy finish. In fact, you can see on the seam here that the label has kind of a brown hue to it, which again, I think is appropriate given the candle title and its scent notes. Okay, let's talk about Sweet Tiramisu. This one, it's interesting on burn, on warm. So in terms of scent quality, I feel like the fragrance that's in this is artificial. It's decent, but there's something off about it, and it definitely doesn't smell like espresso. Really, all I get is like a sugared cream note. This is just very creamy and vanilla-y, but it doesn't smell like authentic cream and vanilla. And it definitely doesn't smell like tiramisu. When I think tiramisu, I think what this looks like right here. Cocoa powder on the top, cream layers with espresso soaked lady fingers. I want to smell coffee. I've made tiramisu. It smells like coffee. This just smells like weird cream. I don't even know how to describe it. It just smells weird. In terms of throw, it's pretty decent. I did end up assigning this one a B in throw. It fills my small room, but again, it's not that pleasant of a smell, and you can smell it in the open concept, but it's not able to flush out all 3 areas. So it comes close, but it does not fill the open concept space. Now, in terms of burn quality, I gave this candle a C, and that's because there's been some noticeable issues with sooting. You'll actually notice how discolored the wax has become from the soot. Also, this used to be more of a clear frosted jar, and it's gotten quite brown. The wax pool is also full of sediment. I trim my wicks, so this is not a me issue. This is a this candle issue. So I did end up assigning it a C in terms of burn quality because it's got quite a few issues. It's a consistent burn. I haven't seen it dudding out yet, but it's a dirty burn. In terms of aesthetic design, I rated this a C. I think it's pretty generic. It's functional. It definitely serves a purpose. It tells you what this candle is, although maybe it doesn't because it doesn't smell like tiramisu. But otherwise, the jar is pretty boring. It's just a kind of a frosted glass look with no detail. I just don't find it that interesting. Now, in terms of price, this is normally a $25.50 price point with 14.5 ounces. That works out to $1.76 an ounce. Again, Goose Creek burns up to 45 hours. That puts us at 57 cents per hour. If we mark this down to a common sale price of $11, that makes it 76 cents per ounce, which works out to be an A in per ounce value, and 24 cents per hour, which works out to be a B in per hour value. Overall, this candle received a 2.67 GPA. I do not recommend repurchasing this unless you want a candle that just smells like cream and artificial vanilla. It smells nothing like tiramisu. It smells nothing like coffee. I think I originally thought it was pleasant and I wanted it around. I actually don't like it anymore. I'm only halfway through. I just added it to my March rotation. I'm going to be hate burning it to get rid of it. My husband doesn't mind it. He says it's not that bad, so it could just be my bias or my frustration with it that's tainting my perception of it. But I'm just over it. I'm done with it. I really wanted something that was more coffee-based. All right, so let's take a look at our roster. We have all of our grades in here now, and let's talk about best of each element. In terms of scent quality, the winner is Pink Lavender and Espresso from Bath & Body Works. In terms of throw, it goes to Espresso Cake Pop from Goose Creek. Burn quality, the best burning candle in this bunch was number 33 from Bath & Body Works. In terms of aesthetic design, I did like that Espresso Martini from Homeworx label the best, although that was the only thing it had going for it. In terms of value per ounce, we have a tie for first place with Espresso Cake Pop and Sweet Tiramisu. Both of those are Goose Creek candles. In terms of the per hour value, we have a winner that goes to coffee and whiskey. So it's overpriced per ounce, but it's supposed to last a long time, which makes it the best value for hour burning. We go ahead and put these in order from top to bottom. Our winner in this group is the Espresso Cake Pop from Goose Creek, followed by the number 33 by Bath & Body Works, followed by Pink Lavender and Espresso by Bath & Body Works. Then we have Sweet Tiramisu by Goose Creek, followed by Coffee and Whiskey by Bath & Body Works, and finally, no big surprise, Espresso Martini came in last place. All right, y'all, this was really fun. I took longer to get episode 3 out than I expected. That's because I really care about doing thorough research and being very particular and precise and trying to make less mistakes than I did in my first one. But I do want to show you the roster for episode 4, which is the final episode of the series. Again, it's going to take a bit for that to come out. I haven't even started burning most of those candles yet. So here's the roster for that one. There are 12 candles in the final episode that I'm going to be really excited to share with you. And there's a pretty good mix of candles that are like a cafe au lait, so a little bit heavy on the milk, but still have that coffee scent to them, or like a cappuccino or an espresso where you're getting a good balance of milk and espresso. But then we also have some mocha candles that are going to be heavy on chocolate, either white or dark, with that espresso and flavoring. And then we also have quite a few latte candles, which are going to be much heavier on the milk and flavoring with a little bit less of the espresso or coffee flavor. So a pretty good wide variety, but these were all ones that authentically smell like coffee to me, so they didn't belong in the coffee adjacent episode, but they also don't really just smell like coffee, therefore did not belong in episode 2, but all pretty stellar, and I am really excited to share my findings with you. All right, I will end episode 3 there. I hope that this short but sweet list has given you some insight into the best coffee adjacent candles that I have found on the market. I hope that this gave you an idea of some you might like to check out, or like with the espresso martini, ones to clearly stay away from. If you appreciate this series, and in particular this episode, be sure to give me a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, I do have more research planned, so make sure you subscribe so that you have access to that playlist and those videos as they are released. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being here. Have a great night, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.